you're going to talk to us about AI. This sounds like sounds like a horrible question, but why are you equipped? What right have you got to teach church leaders about AI? Tell us a little bit about your background and why this is a subject that we should listen to you talk about, and then we'll dive in.
I kind of really don't have any reason to be talking about it because, it's one of those things that's, very, very new and it's emerging and it's constantly changing and evolving. But I've been working in the church online and social media space since about 2008 when I moved my family from Australia, Melbourne, Australia, to New Jersey to become the eighth online pastor in the world at a church called Liquid Church, and I built a team there that started out pioneering in this online space using live streaming of services and Facebook groups and Instagram when that came out. Then started leveraging YouTube as well, and then in 2013 I moved my family down to Atlanta, where I became the online and social media pastor at North Point, where Andy Stanley is the lead pastor, and I was there for nearly 8 years as the online and social media pastor there. And that incorporated a lot more things than just a live streaming of services. It included social media, which we had about 1 million social media followers. We had about 70,000 people who watched our services live online, and it was fully live. I hosted live. It was live worship. It was live preaching. We had about 80,000 who watched those messages on demand during the week on our website. And then we had about eight to 900,000 people who downloaded our podcast every single month. And so a big part of my role was wrangling all of those people together, and especially the ones who live within driving distance of our buildings, our locations around Atlanta, helping onboard them into on-site campuses. So as AI started to take off, I started to get involved in a little bit of AI, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But, AI is one of those things. I've written a chapter about it, a whole chapter in my book, Meta Church. And that came out a couple of years ago, and everything has changed since then. So that chapter is now redundant. But, I'm constantly talking with ministry leaders who are in the online and AI space from around the world, and constantly trying to stay on top of everything. And I'm a person who uses AI multiple times per day. In fact, just this morning, Duncan, I was on the treadmill in my studio here, and I was using AI to respond to a whole bunch of emails while I was walking on the treadmill. And it was all just through an app, and nobody would know that I was using AI, and it probably produced content, email responses that were better than anything that I could write. So yeah, I'm a regular user of it in the ministry space as well. And now I work for YouVersion in Australia. And so, leveraging that online technology and helping people engage with the Bible is really what I've always been about. And it's the things I'm most passionate about.
So, Dave, it's over to you. We want to know what AI is and how we can leverage it to change our church. Because for some of us, we're excited about it, and looking at the comments, some of us are a little bit scared of it as well. So, help us
Yeah.
understand AI.
Yeah, so what I want to do, Duncan, is I want to walk through, a little. I'll put some slides up on the screen, and just talk through some practical things that I think will be super helpful to church leaders, no matter what your context is, whether you're in, the northern part of the UK and dealing with snow, or whether you're in the Gold Coast of Australia and dealing with rain right now. Whatever your context is, what I want to do is give you some practical tools that no matter what level of AI use you're at, that hopefully you'll be able to get something from today. So I hope you've got some notebooks, some notes with you, and you're ready to take some notes, because I'm going to share quite a bit today. Okay, so I'm going to share my slide deck there. I'm assuming you all can see that. So what I want to talk about specifically is the use of AI to transform your church and to transform the way that you do church, i.e., what you do during the week in the lead up to your Sundays. So as Duncan has already said, my name is Dave. Been an online pastor since 2008, and I have to admit, when Duncan first reached out to me, the feeling that I had around this idea of talking about AI, I want to be really honest and candid with you all. One of the most difficult things I could be asked to do in the online ministry space at the moment is to speak at a workshop like this on AI. And the reason that that's so difficult is because, as I hinted at, this landscape, this technology is changing and developing, not just every week, but literally every day. And I get nervous when I get asked to speak about AI because by this time tomorrow, some new technology will come out that will make this talk completely outdated. And all of you guys on this call right now, and everybody who's going to watch it later on demand, and all of my peers who see it will consider me to be old and redundant. And I really don't want to be seen as old or redundant or unable to keep up with modern technology. And you know what? To be honest, I don't really have a problem admitting that to you guys because I have a feeling that it's not just me. I don't think I'm the only one on this call who occasionally feels like you're struggling just to keep up with all the advances in technology, not to mention the advances in AI. I don't think I'm the only one who feels out of their depth around some of this stuff sometimes. I don't think it's just me. I think it's all of us. I think it's a we thing. And that's why today my goal is to simply just help you see and understand AI a little bit different in your context and to give you some really simple and practical tools and ideas to take your use of AI to the next level. No matter what you do at your job, no matter how old or redundant you might feel, there's going to be something in this for you to take away and put and apply even just straight away today. What I'm not going to do is even attempt to try to give you a rundown on all of the tools and options available to you because that changes every day. So instead, I want to discuss an overall approach to using and considering artificial intelligence in a ministry context. Now, while I bet all of us are at different levels of understanding about how machine learning works and the importance of AI technology, I'm sure we can all agree with the founder of YouVersion and the innovative pastor at Life Church, Bobby Grunwald, who once said, as technologies emerge and create new possibilities, it's important to us that the Bible be at the forefront of this innovation. I think the Bible and the church, we should be at the forefront of this innovation. I think all of us can kind of agree on that. And the good news is that it seems that more Christian leaders than ever before agree with Bobby on this idea. In fact, Barna research from earlier this year in the US showed that 88% of pastors are comfortable using AI in areas like graphic design, and 89% of US pastors believe AI will have some impact on relational quality. Now, this is a huge improvement on the previous studies that showed that only 54% of pastors were concerned about the use of AI in churches. But before we get too deep into some of the practicalities and the practical guides for you to use at your church, I want to be clear that after all of my years being in the digital ministry space and being in online church and leveraging and using AI in the ministry context, I have come to the conclusion that the AI ministry leaders should prioritize over everything else is authentic interaction. The AI we should prioritize, the AI we should be most focused on is authentic interactions. Any online technology that your church or ministry is considering using, whether it's AI, whether it's a new social media platform, or whether it's advertising your church Sunday services on the Waze app, you should run it through the filter of authentic interaction. The question you need to ask when it comes to any sort of technology is, will this new platform, will this new technology help me reach, engage, and interact more with the people who live within driving distance of my church building? We have to always remember that technology serves your mission. Your mission does not serve technology. And that's why I believe that authentic interaction is greater than artificial intelligence. If you're not doing that first AI well, if you're not doing authentic interaction well, you shouldn't even consider using the second AI yet. And the other thing that's super important is that we need to understand that there are limitations to AI, along with the potentials of AI. We all have heard about these giant companies that expect to spend hundreds of billions of dollars over the next 12 months on AI. And as a result of that, it can be really easy for us to just simply assume that there's no limits to what AI can do. But we need to approach it with the understanding that there are things that it can't do. There are limitations around artificial intelligence. And that's why my friend Kenny Jang from Church Tech Today has told me that when it comes to using AI in your church, you really need to think of AI as a seminary student intern. And I agree with this idea, which is why I believe that church leaders will see the benefit of AI when they choose to see it as standing for apprentice intern. If all you take away from this workshop today is that AI stands for apprentice intern, that will reframe the way that you think about this technology. Hopefully, it takes some of the fear out of it, but will also give you a perspective on how you should leverage it when it comes to your ministry. I mean, after all, you wouldn't ask an apprentice to develop your organization's new major growth strategy and then roll it out without checking on it, right? You wouldn't ask an intern to write your Christmas message and then go straight to the pulpit and preach it on first draft without having even looked at it once, would you? You wouldn't expect that from an intern. But you would ask an apprentice or an intern to help with research or to collect data. So when it comes to artificial intelligence, we need to give AI tools the same responsibility and oversight that you would give an apprentice or an intern. Give them the same responsibilities and also the same follow-up. And we know that the output that we can expect from an intern is determined by the instructions that we give them, right? And it's the same with AI. The level of input we give the large language models that we're all using will determine the output that it provides. The input you give is so important, in fact, that according to Bloomberg, Forbes, LinkedIn, and Time Magazine, one of the most sought after positions in technology right now is that of a prompt engineer. Now, if you've not heard of this role before, prompt engineering is the art of using keywords to get AI tools to generate better images and more accurate and relevant written responses. And according to Time Magazine, prompt engineers can earn up to $335,000 per year USD anywhere in the world, and they don't have to go into an office to do it. That's all remote. 335K USD for remote working. That's what prompt engineers can earn. But I want to help all of you guys today to become your church, your ministry's prompt engineer for free. I want to help you get the most out of your AI requests and become your own prompt engineer. And all you need to do to become your own prompt engineer, to become your church's prompt engineer, is to remember the word prompt. All you have to do is remember PROMPT. Now I'm going to break all of this down to you over the next couple of minutes, okay? The letter P stands for professional experience. You need to set the parameters whenever you're making an AI request, no matter what platform you're using, whether you're using ChatGPT to help you with research, whether you're using Claude AI to help you write a message or an email, or whether you're using an AI to generate photos of Jesus drinking eggnog, you need to set the parameters for your request. What assistance are you specifically requiring, and what role would you like AI to play in the request that you need? That's why I recommend starting your prompt by requesting a profession you want the platform to be proficient in. Now, when I'm looking for social media assistance, I typically start by outlining the professional experience that I'm seeking. This may mean that I start with a prompt that looks something like this. This is what I would type into ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI platform I'm using. I would tell it, you are a social media professional with 10 years experience creating highly engaging social media campaigns for non-profit. Now, in your context, it may mean you write something like, you are a professor of biblical Hebrew with 20 years experience in full-time ministry as a teaching pastor. Or you might say you are a child education expert with 30 years professional experience teaching children aged 3 to 5 in a rural setting. You get the idea, right? You have to set the parameters of the experience, the professional experience that you want the AI learning model to have for your specific request. Now, the R in prompt stands for review understanding. And again, of all of the things that I'm about to say, I think this is the most important. I think this is the one that if you're starting to tune out, if you're already looking at Amazon, if you're already answering texts or replying to emails, I just want you to tune in for just a minute and then you can go back to doing whatever you were doing. R stands for review understanding. You always need to make sure the platform you're using understands what you're requesting of it. And to this end, after each line of a prompt, and before I make a specific request, I always ask, do you understand? So going back to my example, if I was to write something like, you are a social media professional with 10 years experience creating highly engaging social media campaigns for nonprofits. The very next thing I would type before I hit return is, do you understand? And the typical response that I get from a platform like ChatGPT, actually, this is the response I got from ChatGPT when I wrote this in as I was preparing this slide. The response was, absolutely, I understand. Isn't AI so nice to you? Like, absolutely, I understand. I like to read it in a British accent in my head most of the time. I have a decade of experience crafting compelling social media campaigns specifically tailored for nonprofit organizations. What can I assist you with regarding social media strategies or campaigns? Isn't AI so polite and generous? Do you see why I read it? I read it more in that British tone rather than the Terminator tone, because they said AI was going to kill us, but it's actually quite polite. So always start with, do you understand? Now, this helps you know that the platform understands what you're specifically asking of it, and it helps narrow down the boundaries of the information, of the research that it is going to provide for you. Also, Google's AI team came out earlier this year with data showing that the best AI prompts are 25 words or less. In fact, they recommend splitting up prompts over multiple messages. And this is why I always suggest ensuring that AI understands what your objective is. Asking this simple question, do you understand, helps break up the prompt across multiple messages as well. So you fit into that advice from Google's AI team for that prompt to be about 25 words or less if you can do it. Okay, so we've gone through P and R. What is next? What's the next letter? Anybody put it in the chat? What's the next letter? Or just mouth it because I can see some of you. It is, yes, I see that person with the beard and the glasses said, oh, looked at the camera and laughed. Thank you. Yes, I'm talking about you. Next one is O, and the O stands for objective. This is when you outline the objective of your request. What is it that you are specifically wanting the AI platform to do for you in that instance? Do you need a Bible devotion written? Do you need some sort of age-appropriate activities planned for your family ministry? Do you need a short video script done? Do you need a social media strategy for the week leading up to Christmas? Or do you need some ideas generated around how you're promoting Christmas? You have to let it know what the objective is, and providing a short, clear objective helps the platform understand your prompt. So I'm going to go back to that example that I was using, which you'll all remember. You're a social media expert, 10 years experience creating highly engaging social campaigns for nonprofits. Then I always write, do you understand? Everybody say it with me. Do you understand? And then the next thing I would write is my objective. I need a cross-platform social media campaign comprising 12 posts to promote a ministry event to be held on Friday, April 28th. Do you understand? My objective here is short, It's clear. It's under 25 words, and it provides very specific details about the things that I want and the time I need it, the dates that I need it to include. So that's what I mean by objective. Make sure that it's very clear, that it's very specific, and that it provides all the relevant information, and then always end with, do you understand? Now, those of you who are following along know that the next letter is M in prompt. PROM, and M stands for mimic or model. Mimic or model. This is when we set the style guide for the prompt. We set a model that we want it to compare it to. We want it to be like. We want AI, we want ChatGPT or Claude to mimic or model its response on a certain person or a certain organization. If I was wanting, for example, a sermon outline, I might say something like, I need an outline for a 30-minute sermon about Deuteronomy 5, chapter 5, verses 6 to 9, written in the style of Andy Stanley, Nikki Gumbel, Christine Kane, and Craig Rochelle. Now, I'd be super interested to find out what it produced based on that, because that is an eclectic group of people right there. I mean, all gifted, fantastic communicators, but all with very clear style. But you get the idea. I'm starting to ask it. I want you to model it after this. I want you to use this as the example of what I'm creating. So again, with all of this in mind, going back to my running example, it might look something like this. You're a social media professional with 10 years experience. Do you understand? I need a cross-platform social media campaign of 12 posts. Do you understand? I need the posts in the campaign to mimic churches like Elevation, HBT, and Life Church. Do you understand? So the idea is I am trying to get it to create content that looks like, that feels like the things that are inspiring me. Now, you could actually do it about, I want it to mimic your church. You can do that. And it will start scraping data off your website. It'll scrape data off your social media platforms to try to create, even scrape data off your message series. If you've posted the video versions of it, it will transcribe and it'll scrape that data in an effort to try to make it fit and feel like your church in your context. So that's another good thing to add. It doesn't have to be all of these big name organizations and ministries and speakers that we want it to mimic. You can actually make it mimic itself after you. It just needs to learn how to do that. And it just needs the right amount of material and resources and information on the web already that it can pull from. So just to reiterate, the M stands for mimic or model. What are you trying to make it look and feel like? Now, does anybody know what the next letter is? Are you following along at home? You can all say it with me. Well, a lot of people need a break, Dunk. I think they need to go and pee, because a lot of them in the room just said pee, because there is another P in prompt. PROMPT. I saw Duncan doing the T sign. No. Or you're doing timeout because people need to pee. I get it. I'm with you. The next P, stay with me. Stay with me. The next P is primary audience. Primary audience. This is where you include the target audience for your request. It's important to include this in an AI tool so that it can produce the most optimized, relevant response. Otherwise, it might create content for an audience in Oklahoma or Texas, and that's not really going to suit wherever it is you're living in Australia, or wherever you're serving in the UK. So you want to make sure that you add your primary audience, your target audience here. And your target audience can be an age or a gender demographic. It can be a specific audience within an audience. It can be a location-based audience. So you might say, I need you to create posts and content relevant to somebody in South London or wherever it is that you serve. So again, I want to go back to my running example here. So if I continue through, social media professional, 10 years experience, do you understand? Cross-platform social media campaign, 12 posts, do you understand? Need it to mimic these churches, do you understand? Then I get to the primary audience. The posts need to target 18 to 30-year-olds living in Melbourne, Australia. Do you understand? So that's the next level down. That's as we continue to drill down on the information. And ChatGPT, Claude, any of these other LLMs that you're potentially using, they will keep focusing, continuing to focus and funnel in on the information that it thinks you want, the more information that you give it. So the last P is primary audience. And then the last letter in this whole equation is, of course, the T, which stands for your task parameters, your task parameters. These are the boundaries that you're putting on the task. What do you need the boundaries of this task to look like? Do you need 12 social media posts? Do you need a 300-word blog for your website? Do you need an outline for a 25-minute sermon? Do you need small group questions for a group of 12 elderly people? You know, this is where you start to put in that information. And these task parameters ensure that you get the AI tool to generate better images or more accurate and relevant written responses. So with all of these PROMPT prompt levels included, my running example for what a healthy prompt might look like would be this. You're a social media professional with 10 years experience. Do you understand? I need a cross-platform social media campaign comprising 12 posts. Do you understand? I need it to mimic these churches. Do you understand? Then I get to the primary audience. The post needs to target 18 to 30-year-olds living in Melbourne, Australia. Do you understand? And now I get to the task parameters. I need the 12 posts to work across multiple platform character lengths, to include at least one emoji in each, and to have a call to action or question at the end of every post to attract engagement. Do not use hashtags or formal or insider language. See, I've drilled super far down now into this social media campaign, this imaginary social media campaign that I'm trying to create, because I want it to produce the best possible outcome for me so that I don't have to spend too long editing and revising things and stuff like that. Now, a long quality prompt like this, separated into smaller sections with clear parameters that are roughly somewhere around that 25 word mark in length, is the best way for you to get quality outputs from any AI platform. So to summarize just this portion, the way that you can become your church's prompt engineer is to remember the word prompt, which stands for professional experience, review understanding, objectives, mimic or model, primary audience, and task parameters. But just like you would with an assistant or with an intern, whatever output you get needs to be checked. It needs to be certified. Any citations need to be double checked. Any data needs to be double checked. Any references need to be double checked. So you just need to keep that in mind. Remember, this is an intern working for you here. You don't just take it all on face value. So that's how you become your church's prompt engineer. Now, if there was one other thing in the time that we have that I was going to encourage you about when it comes to AI in your church, it would be simply that your church needs an AI policy. Your church needs an AI policy, and it needs an AI policy more than you probably realize. It needs it because whether you know it or not, people in your staff, people on your volunteer teams are using AI one way or another. So your church needs an AI policy. It needs a policy that covers what sort of information people are inputting into these large machine learning platforms, because once some information is in there about some of your parishioners or some of your your students, or some giving information, once that information is input into a large machine learning platform, it can be accessed by anybody else who uses that platform. And that's just one reason why your church needs an AI policy. It needs an AI policy on how to attribute AI generated content as well. Your church community needs to know if a script has been generated by AI or if an image has been generated by AI. And these are the sorts of discussions that can often cause a lot of people to suddenly become fearful about AI and make the decision that nothing good comes out of AI, right? So therefore, we just shouldn't even be using it. And it can be easy to start thinking that, well, if I have to do all these things to even get an accurate and a high quality answer out of AI, now I have to create an AI policy as well. That can all seem like it's a little bit too hard. And I totally get that. And that's why I think one of my favorite quotes is from pastor and author R.T. Kendall, who says this: sometimes the greatest opposition to what God wants to do next comes from those who are on the cutting edge of what God did last. Just because we're afraid of something doesn't mean that we should throw it away, and doesn't mean that we should just avoid it and bury our head in the sand and just say, hey, somebody else can deal with that. Maybe the next person can deal with that. We need to start dealing with it, and we need to start getting things in place. Now, if I was going to write an AI policy for your church, I would encourage you to use an AI platform like ChatGPT or Claude to do it. And I mean, just as an example, this is the sort of prompt using the PROMPT thing. This is the sort of prompt that I would give if I was going to use AI to create an AI policy for your church. I would start with, you are an experienced policy development officer and lawyer with 20 years experience specifically in the Australian church and ministry space, or the UK church and ministry space. Do you understand? Then the next thing I would do, I need you to write a first draft of an AI policy for an Australian church, which needs to cover AI attribution, IP, and privacy. Do you understand? After that, I would go into the mimic side. Can you model this on an organization that is a not-for-profit registered charity with a paid staff of eight people and a volunteer team of 20 people? Do you understand? The next prompt I would give. Can you write a version of the policy that is easy to understand in everyday language, assuming that you're going to pass this on to your staff or pass this on to your volunteer team? Do you understand? When you do all, and then the last thing I would do is I need to add a risk register presented as a table for board of directors use to the policy form. So I need you to add this risk register as a table into the policy form so that our board of directors can use it. Do you understand? This is what it produced when I did that. And it took AI about 15 seconds to do it. And what we have here is an AI policy for a church that is probably more informed, more up to date, and more robust than anything you or your staff might be able to write. It covers privacy and data protection. It covers responsibility for staff. It covers intellectual policy. It covers breaches and enforcement. And there's a risk register for your board of directors or your elders to go through. Then the next thing I would probably ask it to do if I was going to do something like that is I realize I need to communicate this new policy to the staff and to volunteers. So let's have AI to do that for us as well. So I do a prompt that's something like, I need an email written to explain why the church is introducing a new AI policy to church staff with a link to the policy. And I also need a similar email for volunteers. Do you understand? And this is what it would produce. Dear staff, we are committed to ensuring that your church name continues to uphold the highest standards in our work, including our use of technologies. As part of this commitment, we are introducing a new AI policy to guide how we use artificial intelligence responsibly and effectively. And then it gives you a brief summary of what it covers, and the similar one for volunteers, which is just a little bit shorter. So that's the sort of thing that AI can do for you. Now, I'm going to make all of the policy and these emails available to you, so you copy and paste them. For those of you in the UK, you might need to just tweak it just a little bit to ensure that it covers UK law. But again, that's just tweaking one or two prompts. But I'm going to make that all available for you to edit and to use. Now, I go over a lot of this sort of stuff, as I mentioned earlier, in the chapter on AI in my book that's called Meta Church, which you can pick up just about anywhere. And if you want to get more tools and resources for AI in your church context, I want to encourage you to check out these three platforms. AIforchurchleaders.com is a great repository of a whole bunch of different ministry leaders providing information and resources around the use of AI in all sorts of ministry contexts. AI for Church Leaders Facebook, that's a group for people, either pastors or social media staff, comm staff, marketing staff in your church who are leveraging AI. And then Church Tech Today is just a great tool to keep up to date with what's happening in the AI space. So there's just three resources for you to use there. And then, I would love to stay connected with you if there's anything that I can do to help your staff, your ministry. I just love helping churches everywhere around the world. And so if you want to shoot me an email, there's my email address. You can follow me on those platforms and DM me if that's a great way to do it. Or if you scan that QR code, you're going to actually have my cell number as well. I'm going to give you my cell number. It's not a fake number. It's not an app. It's literally my number. And usually when I do this, my wife always gets mad at me because she's wondering why I'm giving my number out. But I also get inundated with people texting me just to prove whether or not it's real. It is real, but that's just a example of how serious I am about helping your church in whatever way I can when it comes to AI, when it comes to online technology, because the reality is this stuff isn't going away. It's not like Netflix is going to suddenly stop streaming. It's not like Amazon's going to stop selling. Online and digital is here to stay. And if we want to take our churches into the next generation, if we want to hand off healthy churches, if we want to reach more people so that we can change more lives in the context that you're in the change more lives in the families and the organizations that live and work within driving distance of your church building, then we have to be leveraging technology as much as possible. That's the only way that we're going to start making changes. And I'm serious about helping you and your team in any way that I can. So please feel free. If you hit me up with just a question, I will just ping you back with whatever answers I have. And if I can send you resources, I'll do that as well. Even if those sources link to other platforms and things like that, I just seriously want to help you all. So yeah, I hope that's helpful.
I have a couple of questions, and then there's some really, really, really good questions coming in as well. Sometimes you go to these webinars and you get your pen and your piece of paper and you go to write things down and you end up 20 minutes in, you think, that's no point. There's nothing to write down. I have taken pages and pages of notes. This is so fresh and so helpful around a subject that as church leaders, so many of us have no idea of. Someone's just put in the chat, brilliant, Dave. Thank you so much. It was so helpful.
Thank you. Well, I know a lot of people were trying to take notes. I could see that happening. So I've just started uploading my slide deck into the chat so everybody can just have the slide deck.
Mate, that's so good. Thank you so much. Let me a couple of questions to ask, and then we'll get on to the questions that people are dropping all the time into the chat here. Somebody said, look, there's different people. Some people here have used AI a lot. Some people, it's all brand new, but they know it's something they've got to get to grips with. Someone said, look, I'm overwhelmed. Where do I even start with this? You mentioned Claude, who I'd never heard of. And I think we've all heard of Chat GPT. Where would you suggest we go if we're new into this to begin to just play and see what it can do for us?
Yeah, I think you just used a great word. Go in and start playing. Now, the one that most people use is ChatGPT when it comes to stuff that a lot of pastors are doing. And so I always recommend just get a free account for ChatGPT and just start playing around with it. Now, I mentioned Claude a lot because Claude is probably the one that I use most. It's CLAUDE.ai, Claude AI. And I use it a lot purely because in all my experience, in all of my experimenting, in all of my playing, Claude produces the most human-like writing tools. It produces the most human-like emails, the most human-like social media posts, all of those sorts of things. So I love Claude for that reason. So I would highly recommend Claude. But again, start with Chat GPT and just play around with that. And then you'll start to realize what it is you like, what it is you don't like, where you think it might be helpful. And once you reach that point, that's when you can start playing around with some of those other resources that I gave. The AI for Church Leaders Facebook group is a great place to go in and start learning about some new platforms that people are using. I'm on there all the time because I'm learning stuff when it comes to creating images and things like that. So I would just say get ChatGPT first, start playing around with some of that PROMPT stuff and see what it produces and then take it from there.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, questions. I'm going to just fire through them because there are so many. Great question from my friend Drew. How does a church convince their congregation that AI is not somehow immoral or false and it's just another man-made technology? Because it's like a lot of these things that come into church, people are suspicious straight away. Like, oh, we pay the pastor to do the Bible readings. Now he's doing his Bible readings in 15 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I've been dealing with this since 2008, right? When as a church we started using Facebook to start promoting some new sermons and started using Facebook groups to have small groups. It's just one of those tools, right? It's just all it is a tool. And the tool can be used for good or it can be used for bad. And so we have to recognize it in that way. It's a lot like a knife, right? I can use a knife to make something, or I can use a knife to do some injuries. So we just have to leverage it like that. That would be the first thing. I don't think I think it's amoral. It is just a tool that we have available to us as what we do with that tool. The other thing I would suggest is, Dunk, we all use AI much more than we realize. Yeah. If anybody in your congregation is using the Waze app or the Apple Maps or Google Maps, they're using AI. If you have ever said, hey Alexa or hey Siri, guess what? AI. All of that stuff is AI. Even stuff on the YouVersion Bible app is AI, like leverages some AI in the background. We're all leveraging AI and we're all using AI. We just don't really know it because we never called it AI until just recently. And so that's where that little bit of fear comes in. But I can assure you that Cyberdyne Systems hasn't started yet. There's no T1000 coming to get you. AI is not what all doom and gloom and fear. It is a tool and a resource that helps us get better and more efficient at what we can do. And if it can take away some of the time spent in front of our computers doing some written work and allows us to have more authentic interactions with the people who are in our community, who are in our churches, if it helps us to go out and have coffee with the local business owners who live in our communities that God has called us to serve, then I say leverage AI for all that it's worth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's really, really helpful. You've given us some language that we can use with small groups in our church. And then to back it up by having a policy that says we want to be transparent and clear about that, then it's brilliant. Thanks, mate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lucy's asked a great question, which was my question as you began to talk. Like I said right at the start, there are some people here who are those early adopters that want to embrace all this and love it and let's do more.
See, Lucy's the person I'm scared of now because she's going to make me feel old and redundant.
There you go. I get the feeling Lucy's probably about 12 years old. But Lucy said, which is a great question, because some of us are a bit scared about this. Can you talk a bit about the ethical use of AI versus the unethical use in a church context? In other words, where have you seen AI work really well in churches and the church space, and where have you seen people stuff up with it and make a right pig's ear of it?
Yeah, great. So let me talk about the stuff ups first. Where I think we start to screw up when it comes to AI is when we don't attribute written content, written information to AI. That would be one way. When we don't attribute images that we've generated that we're leveraging on a website or in a social media post as AI and we pass it off as our own work. I mean, it's the same with giving a bibliography in a book or references, giving references when you quote somebody in a sermon. Like whenever we start to use AI to do something those sorts of things, that's when it gets a little bit difficult. But then, in other ways that people don't often think about, when we use AI without necessarily realizing it, and we accidentally upload a whole bunch of private information about the people who attend our church, whether they're adults or students or kids, into an AI model in order to get what we think is going to be a helpful tool. As soon as we do that, we've breached their privacy. And that's the thing that not a lot of people talk about in church world when it comes to AI, but that's one way that we can abuse AI. We do it without even realizing. We stop protecting people's privacy without even realizing it. Now, the churches that I see and the ministries, the experience that I've had with ministries and churches that are using AI well, they leverage it to save time when it comes to writing emails or asking frequently asked questions. It saves time when it comes to writing scripts if they've got some really good prompts and they've got a really good AI generated tool. They can leverage it to create church bulletins and social media posts. Obviously, leveraging it for research is another great way that sometimes some churches leverage AI, because it can be used to summarize content. It can be used to do some sermon research, things like that. But it can also track and track some of your internal data as well. So it can do things like, hey, here's our our small group signups over the past 3 years. Here's our context. Can you formulate for me a reason why our small groups are going down? And it can do a whole bunch of research in a fraction of the time that it would take a human to do it. And then we get some really good ideas and strategies about how we can promote or regrow or relaunch that small group ministry. So things like that, when I see churches using it for those sorts of things, which are quite different to the way that most people use it, sermon illustrations, you're writing emails, things like that. That's when I get really excited about what the possibilities are, when people start leveraging it for something that's a little bit left of what's normal, but is super helpful when it comes to moving the church forward.
See, when you talk about emails and sermon prep and that, I think I can get that, because Chat GPT is just like another search engine. I can understand that.
Yeah.
When you start talking about leveraging it for research, then I start thinking, where are the teenagers? I need some kids to help me with this, because I feel like an old man when it comes to that stuff. In fact, I have a good friend who's on this call called Matt, who is the youth leader at the church that I used to serve in as well. And he's asked a great question. He says, have you got any ideas about how to involve young people in this space? Because they're already streets ahead of us. He works with the Church of England and
Yeah.
people over a big patch of a big area. How
Yeah,
would
I would be creating a volunteer team to help with first of all, to find new ways to leverage AI technology in your church, because there's so many different AIs that you can use, right? Again, a lot of us in church world, especially senior pastors, lead pastors, those people who are on the front lines of doing social media for the church as well. What we typically think of is just those written responses that AI can help us with, like our emails, like our bulletins, like our sermon notes, like small group questions. But because it can generate so much more than that, it can generate video, it can generate photos. Like there's so much other use for it in multiple different areas around our church, because it can do research. There's so many different areas. So the first thing I would be doing if I was running a church is I would bring together a group of young people who want to help brainstorm some ways that AI could be used in my church. Then I would start to release them to show me some stuff, show me what it can do, help me with that, and get them to start bringing stuff to you. Like I said, AI is an apprentice intern, right? But sometimes we need interns to help us lead the interns. So why don't you just start creating an AI internship and get people to start coming up with those ideas? That's where it would start with for me. What are the ideas? How can we leverage AI? What AI do you see that I'm not thinking about? And how can we start to leverage it a little bit better? And it's right down to things like, for example, did you know that you can use the Bible app, for example, and this is not a promotion of the Bible app, but you can use the Bible app to write devotions, reading plans for your church, and then you can record the audio version of that, and then ask your device, Siri, Alexa, whatever, to play that to have that played in people's homes. So, I could get up in the morning and say, hey, Siri, read me the latest devotion from Duncan and what he preached on Sunday, and it can play it for me. So there's little things like that that you can do. Now my Siri's going off.
Yeah, mine is as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. But there's things like that people who have grown up in the ecosystem of AI, like the young people in your church, that's second nature to them. But for us, it's not second nature. We think, oh, is it going to help me write my sermon? Is it going to help me reply to an email? And that's where our imagination stops. But I would get them to start dreaming up new ways to leverage AI in your church, in every ministry, in every environment, whether it's in the hallways, in the sanctuary, or online, and then start bringing them together and have them start creating stuff. That's what I would be doing.
Mate, I love that. I was speaking in a church this Sunday, and the tech booth at the back was full of teenagers. They were running the show.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the pastor was telling me it's the best way we've got, that age when they feel like they're a little bit too old for youth work. It's the best way we've got for keeping them discipled and keeping them connected.
Couldn't agree more.
I'd never thought of doing that. I think here's something for you, Mr. Levitt, youth worker, gathering together young people and saying, be my AI team and figure out how we can use AI to grow our church. Man alive.
Yeah.
What I can imagine young people tingling with excitement about someone asking them to
totally
like that.
Totally
Brilliant idea. One of the questions that Christopher asked off the back of that is, you mentioned images. You've given us some great prompts, and one of the things that stood out for me from your presentation was somebody dropped it in the comment. It's always been garbage in, garbage out, and the better we are at the prompts, the better results we're going to get, and the more specific we are with prompts. So what about some prompts when it comes to images? Because again, I've never used AI for images, but you've got some ideas for good prompts so we get good images out?
Yeah, it's a similar sort of thing. You just switching it out for images. So I would still follow the same model, right? You are a landscape photographer working in, I don't know, what part of England are you in? Dover. I don't know, is the first thing I could think of. That might be your first prompt, right? And then you want to start to follow through on that whole PROMPT formula. So you're going to put the objectives. I need a sunset photo of the cliffs of Dover with waves splashing up on you start to create all of those sorts of things as well. I need it to look like these with these colors. I need a version of it that's black and white. I need a version of it that's sepia toned. I need a version of it that's 16:9 and a version of it that's 4:5. So you start creating all of those things. I want it to look like a Peter McKinnon image. So again, you're putting the mimic model in there. And as you follow that through, it's exactly the same thing. You're just doing it for a photo. Now, again, a lot of people will just go in and say, I need a sunset photo of the cliffs of Dover. And they'll get a great image, right? It'll create something very, very relevant. But if you want to create something that's a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more original, you've got to put a little bit more detail into it and explain exactly what you want. And so that's how I would be doing exactly the same thing. I'd follow the exact same model. I just change up some of the things that I'm adding.
Great. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Bit of a quick fire thing here. You're leading a church. Which are the main applications you would use for AI for sermon outline prep?
Okay. Can I share my screen one more time, Dunk?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to suggest that, in my opinion, for all the people who are concerned about the use of AI, who are unsure whether or not AI can actually write a message for me and things like that, I would like to introduce you to Google's version of AI. It's called Notebook LM, and it looks like that. Welcome to Notebook LM. It's just notebooklm.google.com. You can create your own account. It's completely free. And the reason why I suggest it is this, Dunk, I prepared this one, this page ready because this is my Notebook LM site. And so I've got three different things here. One is Hebrew Jesus, like this is where I'm doing a whole bunch of research around the Jewishness of Jesus. I've got digital ministry strategies where I'm trying to stay up to date with everything that's happening in the world of AI. But then I've got my messages, right? And if I click into the messages section, what you will see is this is one that I've just started recently, but I've uploaded. So the way Notebook LM is different from ChatGPT. ChatGPT is scraping the internet and pulling in as much information, as much resources, as much data as it possibly can, so that when you put a prompt in, it's trying to pull from the entire internet all the little bits of relevant information, right? What Notebook LM does is it only pulls in the information that you give it. So what I've done here is in my messages, I've uploaded some Andy Stanley Easter messages and some Andy Stanley other messages. And if I want it to write a specific message for me, it will only pull from the information that I've given it. Now, if I go back, for example, if I go back to the digital ministry strategy, you can see here, what I've done is I've put multiple books in this, including my own. That's weird. I put multiple books in here and my notes from those multiple books in here. So it will only pull information from the sources that I give it. It's not pulling it from the internet. So what a great way for you to put up all the transcriptions of your messages and have it write a different message about a different topic. But if you want it to sound like you, it's only going to pull from the information that you gave it. If it's all your information, it's going to create something that's more your information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
So
does.
for example, if I was to write here, write me a social media strategy in 5 steps, and I'm not using prompt here because I need to do it really quick. It's now searching through this group of books right here in an effort to pull information. So it's not pulling it from anywhere else on the internet. It's only this small section. And that's what it's created for me. And it's pulling all of these. And if I click on each one, so this is a quote from 0 to 100, 0 to a million followers, which is one of the books I've got over here, 0 to a million followers. So it's attributing everything back to these things. So Notebook LM, I think for pastors and pastors who give messages, this will be the tool that will help you cross over into the world of AI.
Yeah.
Because you're controlling what the output is, because you've controlled what the input is. It's not pulling it from everywhere else. It's pulling it from your stuff, the stuff that you're interested in. So that's one that I would highly recommend. Notebook LM. It's by Google. It's completely free. And it's a tool that I play around with all the time when it comes to niche topics.
I mean, that's so good. And what you can do, what I've seen happen before, is you can take that information that you've just picked from Notebook LM, specifically around, like you say, around maybe an Andy Stanley talk or something like that.
Yeah.
And you can ask AI to turn it into slides. So you can turn it into and give me 3 bullet points on each slide. So you can, if you're doing a training session with your leaders and you want to know what Andy has to say about developing leaders, you can, it's all there for you. Off the back of that, then there's a couple of slight pushback questions, I would say here, Dave. And I know the guys that are asking the questions, so they're not being mean at all, but I see where they're coming from. So I'm just going to push back a little bit. So Andy says this: how do you ensure we're still engaging our brains and doing thinking rather than outsourcing our intellect to artificial intelligence? Are you concerned that we'll lose the ability to think? How do we safeguard the future for creative leaders and leaders who are still thinking for themselves and being sensitive to the Holy Spirit? Andy's saying that out of a sense of nastiness. I know Andy. He's saying
no, Andy, that's such a great question. Can I push back on your pushback? Because I actually think it makes us more creative. What AI does is it takes away the execution side. It doesn't take away the creative side. I still have to be creative. I still have to know exactly what I want inputted because I have to know exactly what I want outputted. It just takes away that execution side of it. When I use Claude to write an email for me, essentially what I'm doing is I've put a whole bunch of parameters into Claude my account at Claude so that it produces stuff that sounds like me. And if it doesn't, I have to rewrite some of that. And what typically happens is I write out a really quick response, put it into Claude and just ask it to make it better. And it just cleans up what I'm doing. So I'm still using my brain. I'm still doing that. But on the other side, what I'm finding is I'm being more creative because I'm thinking through the things that are important and the things that I want it to do. And it's just executing. So I'm saving time on the execution. Like I think of my daughter, for example, my youngest daughter is dyslexic. So she struggles to read and she struggles to write, but she's still extremely creative. And what she does is she inputs all of her creative ideas and bullet points into an AI platform, and it does the execution side of it by spitting out her thoughts into coherent writing. So there's still a creative element to it. We just have to choose to see it that way.
Yeah, yeah. So Andy's little response to you is he uses ChatGPT loads for rewriting emails.
Yeah,
But he's becoming,
exactly what I'm saying.
yeah, but he's saying he's becoming less good at wordsmithing because he's no longer exercising that part of my brain. ChatGPT is doing it all for him.
Oh, see, I think I'm better at it because I'm reading over the emails that it rewrites. And so I'm learning in the process.
Yeah,
So does that make sense? Like I'm constantly learning all the time.
yeah,
I saw somebody asked about Notebook LM, if the information you put in is private. It is still private because it's private to the little private server that it creates for you. So it's not going out to everybody else, just FYI.
yeah. That's my friend Laolu asked that. What a lovely fella he is. Anyway, Matt has just asked this question. Good question as well. Tell us more about how you get better at smartly prompting AI tools. How have you developed this competency you have about interacting with AI? He really found it interesting in your policy example that you finished each prompt with, "Do you understand?" Why do you ask it if it understands?
Yeah, part of the reason I ask it if it understands is I'm trying to mentally, and this is where some of that creativity that Andy was talking about comes into it. I'm trying to keep my prompts to under 25 words or less if I can. And so by breaking it up with the "do you understand," it's allowing it to start scraping the internet for the things that it needs. And then when I put in the next level of the prompt with the "do you understand," it eradicates a whole bunch of stuff because I've narrowed the search parameters a little bit more. And so always asking it, "Do you understand?" is just a way for me to ensure that it's tracking with what I'm doing and not just producing a whole bunch of stuff. Now, here's what I find sometimes, Duncan. I find that sometimes I'm three prompts in, three parts of the prompt in, and I put a "do you understand?" and it goes, yes, and it just starts creating stuff, right? I ignore it and still write in my next prompt and then hit the "do you understand?" And it completely changes what I've asked it to do because I'm narrowing the field just a little bit more. So again, these large language models are pulling in all of the data, all of the information it has scraped from the internet to write a response that it thinks is the answer to my request. And then when I narrow it down and ask it, "Do you understand?" it says, "Hey, yes, now I do understand that you want something a little bit more nuanced. So I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff and just focus on this narrow stream." And if the narrower the stream of information I can get, the better it is, the more concise it is, and the less I have to edit it. And the more that I get to learn from what a good piece of copy looks like, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. Does it ever say to you, "Dave, I don't understand. I haven't got a
It
clue what
hasn't
you're talking about"?
It hasn't yet, but that's my goal by the end of the year, to write a prompt that's so insane that it just says, "I do not understand."
I think, yeah. I mean, have you ever used it to ask? So you could say, "I want 20 social media posts for my church around forgiveness. What questions? Ask me 10 questions that will help you to write them the best you can." Have you ever done that? Have you ever asked ChatGPT to ask you questions to get clearer?
Yeah, I have, but I haven't asked it around social media stuff. I've asked it around policy stuff like AI policies. Ask me 5 questions about my church so that you can write a AI policy that is contextualized to my church. So I have done a lot of that sort of thing from time to time. Or I've said, I need you to create, like, especially when I use Claude, for example, I need it to create, I don't want to have to constantly go back in and keep telling it what I'm like and what I do like and what I don't like in an email. So I say, ask me 5 questions that you will leverage that about me, about my writing style, what my preferences are, so that you can leverage that in every email that you write for me going forward. And that's another way that I humanize it a little bit. And every now and again, I'll come back and say, hey, ask me 5 more questions to narrow this down a little bit more, because I want it to produce emails content, just using emails as the example, that feels like I wrote it, that feels like a human being wrote it.
Yeah, brilliant. A couple of quick questions. Philip's really made a comment. Why is ChatGPT more polite than the people in my congregation? Which I think is a great question. But
We probably need to read the Bible.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a great question. I know he's probably tongue in cheek, but oh my gosh, don't we live in a world where everybody, Christian or not, online assumes that if I say, Duncan, you're wrong, you think I'm saying, Duncan, you're stupid. And so that's how fights develop. We have to just have a little bit more. We have to be the people who are the examples of generosity, the examples of compassion, the examples of politeness. And if we can model that, people will become more like it. Philip, people become like their teachers. That's what scripture tells us. That's all I can say.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. No, that's
What
great.
does that say about Philip? I don't know.
Yeah. I want to say about Philip's church. So one other question, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce people to what's coming next on the How To Hub. The next one, show a little 90-second video. And I've got one other big question, and we'll tell people how they can get hold of all the stuff that you've been talking about, and get hold of slides, and get hold of some other pieces of resources. But just before I get into that, and my other question is, it seems to me, Matthew's asked this, some people have used AI for free, and some have used paid options. What's the difference between the two? What's the benefit of paid? And
well,
which ones do
the
you?
free version, I don't know how it is in the UK, Duncan, but the free version you don't pay for, and the paid version you do. So that's the main difference. Money exchange hands.
What's the difference in the quality though? Because the free version is pretty decent. What do I get if I pay $10 a month or whatever it might be?
It is a really good question. So I'll tell you what I do. I use free ChatGPT. I use free AI image creation tools. I use Notebook LM is completely free, and the only AI I pay for is Claude. And the only reason I pay for it is I started on the free and it was great, and you get a certain number of prompts per day. I was exceeding that. It took me like 4 days to start exceeding that because I realized how good it was. And so that is the only one that I pay for. All the rest, you can get away with using them all for free. Yeah, I would say don't pay for anything unless you find that you're using this at a higher level, and so you want access to more prompts. It doesn't give you any more information. It doesn't give you better outputs. The outputs are exactly the same. It's just the amount of information you can put into it. But if you want to just save money, ChatGPT for free, Claude for free. That'd be two that I'd recommend highly, and Notebook LM for free. That would be the three that I would recommend, and just use the free versions.